Welcome to Spoilers Intended, a podcast about series, novels, and films. In this episode, we have the grief of an only son, actors stripping down for fun in the sun, and even the iconic Tom Cruise run. That's right, we're talking Top Gun Maverick. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Stephen Ford, joined as always by Andrew Knuckles.
Hello there.
And Joel Killingsworth.
General Kenobi.
Oh! Did we just reverse that? We did.
No.
Hello there is
always
followed by General Kenobi.
General Kenobi.
General Kenobi.
You're not going to make me rewatch the prequels.
This film will make a fine addition to my collection.
I mean, it is probably the best Star Wars film ever made.
Oh, we're getting to that.
Oh boy.
We're going to get to that.
We are not here to talk about Star Wars. We are here to talk about Top Gun Maverick,
I don't
which, spoiler alert, a lot of us might have the opinion that it's the best Star Wars movie ever made. But that's for a little later. First off, we haven't done one in a while, so let's talk about a watch list. There's been a lot of stuff dropping lately, stuff that's either out or just came out or coming out that people are excited about, and maybe we are, maybe we aren't.
Yeah. There's a lot of Star Wars Celebration happened this past weekend.
I mean, we're dancing around, the elephant in the room that y'all already, hello there, General Kenobi.
Yeah.
Obi-Wan is out.
Yeah.
First two episodes so far as of the time of recording.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And opinions? 2/3 of this room has seen both episodes.
So we will keep it as spoiler-free as possible, meaning spoiler-free 100%.
Entirely.
So the only thing that I feel like we as an audience are promised coming into this show is Ewan McGregor is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And so far, Ewan McGregor has been awesome. So,
they're fulfilling that.
I feel good about that. Broad strokes, the story is fun and interesting, but the execution has basically all of the Disney Plus, both Star Wars and Marvel TV shows has really been struggling on the details and the basics of cinematography and all that kind of stuff.
The quality is definitely dropped for a lot of the action scenes. Something not similar, but on the same level of execution as Book of Boba Fett. For a couple things, and
that's real harsh.
That's harsh.
That's real harsh.
Whoa, hold on now.
Now that is not to say that I have not enjoyed it.
I want to qualify this. Book of Boba Fett currently holds the title for the worst we have scored anything.
Yes, that is correct.
So I would be real careful.
This is better than that so far.
Okay, so far it is above that bar
in every respect.
Is it?
The music is fantastic.
That is one thing that Star Wars should have, and if they don't, what are you doing? Is it below a Mandalorian bar?
It's
so far. Now,
but in the action, yes.
Okay.
In the character work, no, it's better.
No, well, hold on now. In the action, yes, but we had magnetic armor in the Mandalorian.
But that is absolutely not fair because we have 3 films worth of Obi-Wan. I don't know. And multiple seasons worth of Obi-Wan as well.
Right. Well, I don't know that that's necessarily not fair, but it's just a natural consequence of.
Well, yeah, but you get to have a shorthand of everything that has already happened to him.
But at the same time, I think even in the absence of that, this stuff is better. Right. It goes ahead and it sets up the conflicts of where Obi-Wan is at this point in his life personally, and why he's there, the reasons that keep him there, and the conflicts that are eroding away at his soul day after day. That, man, you have no idea who the Mandalorian is as a person for the entire first season.
That's true.
We have bare snippets really of his past, honestly.
I will say the show kind of took a different turn than I was expecting it to go.
For sure, yes.
And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. I think it's they definitely kept the general idea of what the show is. pretty under wraps.
Right. So like the trailers, you've got the Inquisitors that are obviously going to be chasing Obi-Wan in some capacity, and that's kind of billed as the major conflict. And you already see that there's at least some scenes where he's not on Tatooine. There's like a darkened cityscape.
Oh, thank God.
Right. And so, but the stuff in between the lines there is very different than anything I expected.
Yeah, definitely. And just from kind of where we know where some of these where Obi-Wan specifically ends up, which is essentially back on Tatooine. Spoilers, oh no.
The sand, no.
But so I hope, I think that a lot of the show is actually going to take place not on Tatooine. Thank God.
Yeah, get us away from that planet for anything. Just
yeah.
Now it's only a 6-episode run, and we already have the first 2 episodes.
So we have 4 episodes left.
Yeah. So it'll be over in a month.
Yep. So it'll be interesting to see kind of where it goes.
What kind of arc you get in that?
Yeah.
Are they about 40 minutes a piece?
Ish.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So not a ton of room, but a decent amount of room to turn around in.
Now, one thing we have all seen, which is also Star Wars related, is the new Andor trailer that came out of Star Wars Celebration.
Correct.
I think it looks fine.
I think Cassian has been one of the best original characters from the Disney material.
Yes, almost 100%.
Because like the whole checkered past of I've done horrible things in the name of this good cause. And so like while that has furthered the cause of rebellion, I bear the weight of that on my soul, you know, and driving him to make the decisions that he does in the film.
Right.
Yeah.
Rogue One.
Yeah.
So that could also be a problem, right? Because this is, at the end of the day, a Disney Plus property.
Yeah.
And we've already established, or we haven't established here, but it's been established generally, the Obi-Wan show has the lightest rating, right? It's very fluffy rating.
It does. It is lower than in maturity rating, like from Mandalore.
Yeah, the rest of that I think has been TV-14.
Yeah,
and this is lower than that.
Like why, like TV-7?
There's already been a pretty gruesome.
Spoilers.
No. I mean, like this is
generally a gruesome.
Death. Not even a death, just a maiming.
Oh. That's okay. Kids can understand that.
Yeah. Kids can understand getting their hands cut off.
Yeah,
that's fine.
No big deal.
But yeah, the new Andor trailer looks interesting in the sense of I hope that Disney has the gut to push it to where he actually does some horrible things.
And he has to be a terrible. I mean, he's a pretty terrible person at the start.
Well, he's a
Rogue
terrorist
One.
Essentially.
Yeah. Well, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. And that's just how it works.
But yeah, like treachery and I can say unnecessary deceitfulness, but like
underhanded dealing.
Right. Yeah. Like the idea that he's going to do whatever it takes to get the best odds of whatever his current objective is done.
Yeah.
And that means getting his hands dirty. And so if we don't get that on screen, it's just going to feel like a disservice to the
little
character.
empty. Yeah. And now, it's definitely one of those things where the trailer makes him out to look like a hero, but clearly they are very good at obfuscating information.
True.
Yeah.
And,
that's true.
And we may have something completely different whenever we actually get it on the screen in front of us.
Right. But so we're going down to Vegas this weekend and we're taking bets on whether Andor is going to be a good show. What odds are we getting?
Maybe 7-1.
Ooh, yeah.
Against?
I give it a 30-70, 30% chance that it's good.
Yeah.
And when I say good, I don't mean it goes above the Book of Boba Fett line. That line, just crossing that threshold is enough to enter the territory of good. Right?
It is?
It isn't.
No.
Oh, okay. I was about to say,
okay.
Crossing that line enters the territory of, you're a show.
Acceptable, reasonable expectations for adults wrote and created this.
Right.
If you take it,
well, hold on. We haven't heard. What's Joel's bet?
Oh, I give it, man. It depends on the level of minimum acceptability to being good, right? Like let's say Mandalorian season 1 is your benchmark for if it's better than that, it's good.
Which is probably a solid 7.
If it's less than that, then it's not good, right?
Yeah.
I would, man.
Okay.
I would give it a 20% chance of being better than
the Mandalorian
season 1.
So if our bar here is better than The Mandalorian, I'm playing in Andrew territory odds of like 7-1 against.
Yeah. Because even Mandalorian is, while probably the best Disney Plus offering from Star Wars to date, is still just only okay. And it's only really good.
A lot of feathers.
You're going to have a lot of people.
It's only really good when you compare it to all the other stuff that they did.
No,
it's really bad.
What's going to happen is now we're going to have a lot of people asking, well, you should review The Mandalorian. It's like, you don't want a review of The Mandalorian.
The Mandalorian is like maybe 4 good episodes in an 8-episode series.
Ooh, man.
Right,
I'm not sure about that.
Well,
one.
Okay, all right.
Is that generous?
No. It is. It might be generous. No, but the problem with that one, which this is a whole other topic.
Yeah, this is a whole different show.
But it just kind of doesn't decide what it wants to be when it grows up until it gets there, and then it's too late to have laid the groundwork.
I mean, that's fair. I mean,
yes.
So at some point, they did announce season 3 for Mandalorian.
True, that was this weekend.
Which is going to be, I think, February of next year.
So, 2023.
And Ahsoka is going to be next year as well.
Yep.
The Ahsoka TV show.
So, at some point, we're probably going to have to review it.
Well, we're going to have fresh Star Wars very soon. We've already done Book of Boba Fett. Obi-Wan, we already said, is going to be concluding here.
And there's a new Taika Waititi film that is going to be coming out next year.
Oh,
that is going to be the first mainline Star Wars film that has happened since Rise of Skywalker.
Mm-hmm.
How long ago was that? 18, 19?
18, 19? I don't even remember.
Well,
it's been so long, I've kind of blocked it out of my memory.
We have the power. I can't blame you for that. We have the power of the internet.
Before we get into Star Wars bashing additional stuff, I do want to say that
we've been in Star Wars bashing more.
We want it to succeed. We don't
19. Rise of Skywalker's 19.
But we want it to be good. Yes. We want new Star Wars content to be made, and we will still watch it regardless of the quality of it. We will probably just be mad at it because we're Star Wars fans. That is what we do. But at the end of the day, there has not been a story change or story addition that they've made throughout all of the media that I haven't liked. The actual technical execution of it has mostly been poor.
All right. All that to say that you should be mad at Andrew because he doesn't like Star Wars.
I know. I like Star Wars probably more than both of y'all.
I'm not here to argue that point, actually. Other things also, Stranger Things season 4.
Yes,
also coming
definitely
up.
Looking forward to that. The release schedule they've been using with Stranger Things to date and continued with this season is just dropping the whole thing on the release date, and so you have
Isn't this like season. 4 episodes, but they're like movie, like it's like an hour?
I haven't looked at how many episodes there are, but they are very long.
Andrew looked at this.
Over the course of 2 parts, so basically season 4 part 1, season 4 part 2.
We're taking the Attack on Titan approach.
Yes, but of course that would be like 5 different parts. Anyway,
yeah.
So this quotation mark season has at least 3 episodes that are as long as movies.
Yeah.
So they're doing this in big chunks.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully that actually works out because I want more Stranger Things. I've loved all the other seasons that I've watched.
Well, if they're trying to, so this is the final season, right? And we only get half of it now and half when we finish the job, whatever that is. And, if you're trying to take what we've gotten so far and say, we're going to put a bow on this, we're going to finish a full narrative of not just, hey, there's a weird thing that happened in Hawkins.
Yeah.
But like there's an arc to do with these otherworldly beings and 11 and 11's past and how does that all fit together? Like there's a lot of unanswered questions. You have to cover a lot of ground narratively to make that satisfying.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of maybe the opposite approach of the Game of Thrones, which was just, these are going to be 2 shorter seasons and we're going to, push them out and get them done.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're saying, we're going to drop 3 episodes and they're all going to be 1.5 to 2 hours, I mean, that's a lot of content.
It is.
Yeah.
So, and it's also a very different approach to filming versus, a show if you're doing long form. So it's very interesting to see. I haven't necessarily kept up with Stranger Things. I've, watched bits and pieces. I know the story at least, but
yeah. I mean, Stranger Things has been always a consistently fun experience each season that's come out.
Yeah,
and I initially didn't even want to watch it because I thought it was a horror.
It is a
thing.
horror thing.
Well, it's
kind
of
a horror thing.
But once you get to that, you're kind of desensitized to it from the sake of the story.
You're pot committed. emotionally invested.
Yeah. At that point, you're like, well, I'm already here.
It's also incremental increases in the severity of the situation.
Correct. Yeah.
Right,
So by the time you get to that point, if it started like that, then you're like, ooh, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
But when you're already there, yeah.
We're the frog and the boiling pot of water where we're slowly turning the temperature up here.
Yeah.
That is the method.
Yep.
All right. I think we covered anything else that's coming up.
No, I mean, unless you want to talk about Spy Family.
I mean, I have no problem talking about Spy X Family.
Well, it's technically Spy Family, but Spy X Family is the actual title.
Yeah, well, that's why I said Spy X Family.
So how does that work anyway? Why? Because there's a lot of
the X
titles that have X in them like that.
The X is just silent.
But why is it there?
I don't know. I don't have an answer.
No, you asked him how does it work, and then you gave him an answer that wasn't how it works.
Well, okay,
it's just what it is.
Like a very popular show or anime that's had basically 2 revivals, Hunter x Hunter. It's just Hunter Hunter. It's not
everyone
Hunter x
everyone
Hunter.
pronounces that X. I swear.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's just the X.
Well, why would
silent.
you not? They put it in the title,
right?
It's the exact same reason why when you're online and you're playing a first person shooter and someone has X's in front of and behind their name.
I have a better answer. You don't look at Spider-Verse's title and go Spider-Man : Into the Spider-Verse, do you? No, it's just there.
But if
they put an X in there,
they're
right?
Using it as punctuation. That's my point.
So is it Spy multiplication family?
Spy times family.
Spy times family.
Equal fun.
It's a Spy Family squared. If you
those are 2 different terms though.
If you so like,
is this a
like
quadratic
is it a comma?
Of a title now?
Could you replace it with a comma? Spy, comma, family. It's like it's spies, but wait, it's a family.
Maybe.
Okay, so
anyways,
so give us the synopsis.
So the synopsis. Well, we are in a alternate world, Cold War Germany. So East Germany, West Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Not with those names, but it's very much so that era.
Yep. Berlin.
Yeah. They tried. Hungarlo. They tried. They didn't try that hard. And basically we have a master spy who is given you see that he's very competent to start, and then he's given a task where he must form a family to infiltrate a place to be able to fit in with the society he's trying to imitate. So he must bring together a family. He apparently
fabricate a family.
Apparently, this spy agency has no resources, and it's your problem to find.
You
a kid.
go out and you get the people.
You go find a kid, and you find a woman who's willing to pretend to be your wife. And we're good with them. So who he finds is a kid who's a telepathic, which is, when you think about it, a really problematic thing to be when you're a dad, pretending to be a dad, also pretending to be someone else as a spy, because they see right through you.
Yeah.
And she sees right through him all the time.
Immediately.
Yeah. And all of his reactions or his natural thoughts of, oh, I need to be careful here. And then she responds to that instead of the outward stimuli he's giving her.
Yeah.
So you get really, really entertaining interactions. And then in order to find his wife, he ends up finding someone who is, unbeknownst to him, a master assassin. And of course, because we have
my disbelief dollars are going fast.
Oh yeah, no, but it's
actually pretty the way that they kind of keep everything hidden. It's actually pretty well thought out.
Okay.
Yeah, they're both push. I mean, obviously, I've done this all from the spy's perspective. From his perspective, assembling this family makes sense. From her perspective, accepting this family being assembled around her also makes sense from her life circumstances. And it's a little absurdist. There's definitely a taste of that.
Yeah.
But you get really, really fun interactions where like the dad, says something, and you get the child in her mind. She thinks Papa is a big liar, and just stuff like that. And like her expressions and reactions to it. It's interesting. We've only watched a couple episodes. It is on Hulu. It is subbed, so you can't watch it while you eat dinner because you have to actually look at the screen the whole time.
Yeah.
Just hearing words does not help me at all. It does something for Andrew and Holly, I know, but it doesn't do anything for me.
I mean, we still don't watch anime whenever we're eating dinner.
Yeah,
unless it's something that we've already seen multiple times,
right.
and we don't need to know what's happening.
Common times for us to watch a new show. So
I actually liked the anime so much that I went ahead and bought all of the volumes of manga that are currently out. There's like 8 volumes, and it's a relatively lighthearted series. It's not overly serious
for the subject matter. While there are definite like confrontations and things happen, it is pretty lighthearted and wholesome.
Yeah, and pretty much everything is mostly solved just by everyone's eccentricities, I guess. Yeah. Where like there are just like, and it definitely helps that it takes place in like basically a post-Germany World War II society, to where everyone is kind of suspicious of someone else because they act weird, because they're like, oh, you're a communist, or whatever. So it's
whatever their version is in that one. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Easily accessed on Hulu.
Yep.
So. But on that note, that is enough talk about things that are out and will be out and should soon be out. And let's talk about something that is definitely out. We have definitely already watched, and that is
multiple times.
Top Gun 2 Maverick Boogaloo.
And give us that synopsis.
Yeah.
All right. So decades ago, we had Top Gun, where Maverick, who is this just absolutely, there's no way that he could possibly exist in the military structure and still be a pilot individual, disregarded orders all the way through to becoming the hero of the story.
Right.
And so here we are 40 years later, 32-ish, somewhere in that range.
86.
And it's actually
36 years.
One of the most
what I said
satisfying transitions for a character over a long period of time that I have seen in quite a while, because he's still the same person. He still has a fundamental disregard for authority, but he has also grown into a person who understands the consequences of his actions and considers what it does to the people around him. And
that's very fair. He's a very real person.
So he has been held back in his career because obviously he doesn't play by the rules that the superiors who would reward him with promotions want him to. But when he does break rules at this point, it is more focused on, well, this is what needs to happen. And I don't actually care about the rules. They're just in the way of what needs to happen. But it's not just, I don't care about rules. It's, I need to get this thing to happen.
Right. Yeah.
And so he is called back to Top Gun to prepare a returning group of top graduates from the program for a very specific mission that is an impossible mission. And that's basically the plot of the film.
Yeah.
All right. So looking at this from our 2 methods of scoring, we have our technical score, where we are looking at the spectacle, the performance,
the score,
and the plot, and then also a separate value that is our entertainment value. But first up, technical score. What did we give that?
We gave it an 8.8.
That is high praise.
It is high.
Especially for what is essentially just a blockbuster action film.
Well, let's flip back. What did we...
And a sequel at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did we give Top Gun?
We gave Top Gun a 6.3 out of 10.
That is a large increase.
It is a big jump.
A significant...
A 2.5 increase to be exact.
33% jump.
But then also on the entertainment value for Top Gun Maverick, we collectively gave that a 9.7.
Oh, someone broke ranks.
That is 2 10s and a 9. That's the only way that math works.
Yep.
Very high, especially if we compare it to 1986's Top Gun Entertainment,
which was a 7 out of 10.
Which is still
so
reasonable.
So this, obviously, they took the premise, which is we're going to do Top Gun again.
Yeah.
And they treated it with respect and put in the work, and it paid off.
And they improved on the concept.
Yeah.
From my perspective.
Like, I mean, just leaps and bounds better than the original in almost every aspect.
Yeah.
I mean, our score certainly reflects that opinion, yes.
Yeah. And the best thing, that everyone will be talking about in the subsequent weeks after they've seen it and everything is just how good the aerial footage is.
Yes.
So good.
It is mind-boggling how good it is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because and even more than just the aerial footage, which was an incredible treat, going from watching the original where you get to the second half of the film and it's just the same 3 shots used over and over
again. Stock footage being reused.
And but even at the beginning of the film, it's really hard to tell what's going on, right?
Yeah, there's not a lot of clarity.
It's just a huge breath of fresh air to go to this where it is crystal clear what's going on with the action,
where the planes
at all
are.
point in time. Whenever there is ambiguity, it is done on purpose because the pilots are confused.
Yes.
Yep.
And that it's so much better.
Then talking about one of our biggest critiques that we were worried about going into this film from our other episode for the first Top Gun film was the use of music.
Yeah.
Right. And going into this film, I was really scared that the music that they used in this was not going to hold up against what I consider probably one of the most iconic
it's a really good
soundtracks of a film. And I know, Joel, you have different opinions, but you didn't grow up with it.
The way that it was implemented in the film with the sound design was not good.
Yeah.
In the original. And so like they open with with Danger Zone.
Yeah.
And it's going on. I'm like, okay, they have the same sort of text opening about, and they call that school boom, Top Gun, right? Yeah. Like it's very much an homage to the original film,
which is Tony Scott, because he passed away a couple years ago, and that was their
and so like this is all appropriate, right? And then it shifts into now we have he shows up at a location, and we're going to get some exposition, and there's a little bit of uncertainty in the scene. And the music shifts tone to reflect that. What am I watching? This is good.
But yeah, the score of the score of this film was fantastic.
Yeah,
it was really good. Lady Gaga's original song at the end was awesome. And then Hans Zimmer did basically a lot of the BGM music throughout the battles and everything, which was really good. And the sound design for like them in the jets and everything. Just like,
because there was they very specifically pulled forward into your awareness the difficulty that they had with breathing when they were going through shifts in positional direction of G-forces and stuff.
Yeah,
which just really added to the tension and like, what they're doing is really hard and really technically demanding.
Yes. Well, another thing that I would like to highlight as improvement, humor.
Oh, yeah.
There was so much humor in this movie, and it was so well executed. There are people out there who need to take notes about comedic timing from movies like this because, wow, it was really well done.
Yeah.
It starts with a D and ends with a Y.
Starts with a D and ends with a Y.
Disney.
Yes. Which is weird because Marvel generally does a pretty good job with it. And then everything else, Star Wars, that Disney is handling just doesn't for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the comedy in this was just hilarious.
Oh, it's like on the nose.
Just their timing. Both times, because I saw the movie twice, both times in the theater, like gut laughter at a couple points in the film that genuinely are funny.
Yeah.
Well, and we also, if we're going to drag Star Wars into this, we can also talk about maybe some role reversal / subversion of expectations / retelling the same story from a slightly different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And again, take notes because Top Gun Maverick is how you do it. Disney.
Well, so to go ahead, because we can't do all of the Star Wars comparisons pre-spoiler wall.
No, it's not possible.
But Maverick's arc, both throughout this story, but really like in taking a look at the difference in his more mature personality at the start of this film and where he was in the previous film, is the arc they tried to give Poe and failed.
Yes, big time.
He is Poe done correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you have this hot try pilot, which Poe is basically modeled after someone like Pete Mitchell from
like
Top Gun.
When can we stop planning and I go shoot stuff?
Yeah.
Right? Like
he's modeled after 1986.
Yeah,
Maverick.
exactly.
They just never get to 2022's version.
Yeah.
But and it was just so perfectly melded too, right? Because like he is still he doesn't like following rules, and he has to, like, there's even a point where he's doing some risky stuff on the first day out with the trainees, and he's talking to himself. He's like, oh, okay, pull your jets, Maverick. Don't get fired on the first day.
That's true. He does,
right? Because like, and that's kind of a self-awareness that comes with maturity of, okay, so I'm doing this thing that I should hold off.
Not be doing,
But he's still going to do it anyways. But he's at least self-aware.
At that point, like it's a reflex, right? Like, but he understands that about himself and is able to make a decision as opposed to just acting on reflex all the time.
Yeah,
and like we talked about earlier, his disregard for rules is restricted by the consequences of what that would do to the people around him. He doesn't super care about consequences for himself.
Yeah.
He's just not that kind of person. And that's important, right? Because if he had completely changed and had become a complete rule follower, you'd be like, well, who is this? This is not the same man.
Exactly.
But at the same time, he cares about what the people around him encounter based on his actions. And so he moderates his behavior for that.
Well, while they make a point of the fact that he has not gone as far in his career as he should have at this point, he's still at a point in his career where people are reliant on him.
Yeah.
Right. Where the results or what he does and produces affects other careers. He's very cognizant of this from the start of the movie throughout. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is kind of going a little bit back towards the spectacle range of things, but you probably, if you were listening to this review, you probably already have seen the film, or if you haven't and you have been living under a rock, basically all of the actors were in those F-18 Super Hornets in the film for filming.
Yes.
Like all of the shots of them like in the cockpit, that is actually them in the jet. Now, they're not flying it, but they're acting like they're flying it. And when they were up there, they had to essentially like be their own photography and cinematography director because the actual director Kozinski, whenever like they go up, he's like, all right, I guess I'll just see you in an hour and hope the footage is good.
I told you what you're supposed to do. Just do that.
Yeah.
And we put the camera here, but you might have to adjust it a little. But yeah, every time that they feel G-forces, they may not be feeling the number of G-forces
that are stated,
but they're definitely feeling G-forces.
I doubt that they did any like 10G maneuvers.
No. No one's doing a 10G maneuver.
That's just movie talk.
Yeah.
Maybe like 4 or 5 is probably where it's
at. If you consider the fact that you take basically your weight and multiply it by 4, that's a massive strain on your body.
It is.
So there's no way. And I will say, from looking at some notes on the production, so this film produced 800 hours of film, which is more than the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy produced.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Right? So they spent, while not all of that necessarily is in the cockpit, I bet a lot of it was in the planes. They spent a lot of time in those jets.
And time equals money, $11,000 an hour.
Yep.
For that. And kind of while we're talking about money, this is now officially Tom Cruise's, because he's both start with T-O. This is now his official largest box office opening weekend ever, period.
We broke the 150 million threshold.
$156 million for the opening weekend.
Domestic. I'm pretty sure the last time I saw said that number is doubled when you include international, and that is not released in China
or Russia.
But that's
kind of a given there.
We're less concerned about that. The ruble isn't worth very much right now. But China is a big movie market, and Tom Cruise is a pretty big name in that movie market. So to have that kind of money coming in without the Chinese market supporting it as well is really impressive. That's a lot.
And this is, a lot of, he was very adamant that this movie would not be on a streaming platform upon release. Like,
yes.
It'll eventually be on Paramount Plus or whatever, in a couple months, I'm sure. But he was so adamant that in the preview film, or basically like the special premiere viewing that we saw on basically the Tuesday the week that it came out, like he had a specific video of him like talking to the audience.
Oh, that was actually still there on the Friday when I went.
Oh, it wasn't.
Oh, really?
It wasn't on my second viewing.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, but
IMAX.
no, it was him talking about, it's been a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of money and a lot of love gone into this.
Yeah.
And we just hope you enjoy it.
And thank you for
Which I kind of like after that I was like, why don't all producers and directors do this?
I got to the end of that and I was like, oh, whatever, that's sweet, whatever. And then I watched the film, I was like, oh, this was really good. He really meant that.
Yeah,
he was not lying.
They put so much effort into this film that it's like it. I mean, clearly it shows in our scores that we gave it just from entertainment alone. But I mean, it was like you could definitely tell that every angle that they were going at was very heartfelt and thought of.
Yes.
No, there was a lot. I mean, obviously, this film was also delayed multiple times.
Yeah, it's supposed to come out in 2019.
Yeah. Somewhat, that was like just an initial actual production delay. And then we had COVID delays again because they really wanted to be in
and
theaters.
I'm kind of glad that it got delayed because they probably let them focus on the film.
I have a theory, and it's really not that far out. And that is that most of the time, like, we're almost never seeing an artist's best because they have to get the work done on a deadline.
Yeah.
And it's got to get out the door. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a project like this where it is forced to take extra time, then you have the opportunity to receive a better product.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Cause I mean, who knows like what the music would have been like, 3 years ago, whenever it first came out. Cause we don't know. I mean, like I'm sure that Hans Zimmer was part of it or Lady Gaga was part of it, but then, maybe they didn't really hit the stride for music until 2021,
Yeah. Or they just didn't figure out what they needed for this particular moment.
Yeah.
And like so much changes in editing too. Like those decisions just impact everything.
Well, I mean, I already said 800 hours of filming time and we get 2 hours and some change on the screen, right? Just by default.
That's
such a small percentage.
Yeah.
Good morning, aviators. This is your captain speaking. Today's exercise is in avoiding spoilers. The upcoming intermission will be your only window to get out unspoiled. When you get back to base, hit the showers, then check out our other content at spoilersintendedpodcast.com. But if you really think you're ready to face spoilers, then stay with your wingman and don't think, just do. If you think, you're dead.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that brief intermission. In case you didn't get the memo, it is all spoilers all the time.
Hope you were not in G-Lock the entire time during that intermission.
Yeah, if you were passed out and you didn't find out, then you are in for some surprises because we are going straight into a little talk about Spectacle, and I imagine the scores are high.
Yep.
Who wants it first?
I'll go 10. I mean, it's just the technical achievement of slapping actors into F-18 Super Hornets and making them be their own photography directors while they're up in the air and and communicating to the other pilots that are also in the air. Hey, you need to move up a little bit. Hey, you need to, get on our 6 a little bit easier so I can get you in the shot. Like that is just so cool.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of, Blue Angels style formation flying going on in this that they're doing over and over and over again while they're filming these things. Because they have to be, the planes are all really close to each other, which is, we can talk about that some other point in this discussion, but it's very difficult to do.
It is very challenging to do. And I'm curious if they did get any Blue Angels pilots for some of these maneuvers.
I meant to note who the pilots were that were credited and see if I could find them in any media, like releases related to something like that. Because I mean, most of the pilots are at a pretty high level, and doing this sort of stuff with a little practice is going to come to. But it would make sense that going to
stunt fighters,
the formation parade flyers
of
the Navy would be the answer. And I don't know.
Yeah,
especially since and they're flying F-18s. That's what they fly. So.
Okay, so going on from the joke of it being a 10, it definitely deserves that.
Yeah.
Mostly, I mean, it was just one beautifully shot. I really love the homage to Tony Scott at the beginning, which is basically shot for shot, almost of with a little bit extra at the beginning, where you have the Top Gun theme going with the same roll of credits on the aircraft carrier, watching F-18s go off the carrier, and then boom, danger zone.
I have a quibble.
Do you?
Yeah. They didn't give us that in Golden Hour. It wasn't enough.
Okay, okay, sure, fine.
Watching that, I was like, yeah, shooting in the right light makes a big difference to the feel of it.
It does, yeah, because you get to see everything. Yeah, I do like that they showed the I think it's the catapult controller like in the little like hut thing,
in the little bucket or whatever.
The stock footage that was used there was, I don't know, it relayed more details to the working mechanisms on the deck.
It was less of, I mean, original Top Gun was a cinematic show. They paid to turn the boat around to get the light right, so that they could have high contrast with the golden light. Whereas this was much more of just it's like 9 a.m. and we're doing takeoffs and landings, so you can see all the details.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Which has its own payoff.
Oh yeah. Okay, so I'll let other people go.
Well, I'm going to drag this way down.
Yeah,
okay,
no, you're not.
You ready? I gave it a 9.
Oh my God. How dare you?
So far down, 10% reduction. Just slap it on there. I loved the fact that I could actually tell what was going on in all of the plane combat scenes. Like, it was just such a 180 from the first film.
Yeah.
And there was nothing in there that I can specifically point to for why it doesn't get a 10 in this category, other than like there was a small element of magic that I don't walk away with it going, like there is a ceiling that a lightning in a bottle could punch through, right? And that's my only complaint, is that it's not lightning in a bottle from this perspective. It's fantastically executed. I especially really, really liked the inclusion of all of the technical training for the mission, where he's talking about the speeds and the times, and you get to watch them practice all of the turns through the Death Star trench run. And
a more difficult. This is not a drag race.
Right.
This is a real race.
And and there's a reason that you need to be in the trench for this one, so that you avoid the turret fire.
Yeah.
And and then looking at the whole mission design, which we'll get further into in the plot.
Right.
Too. But that just added so much to, we have to practice, we have to do all of these very dangerous things that are required because of reasons in the plot. And the more that we practice them and show failure to execute them properly on screen, the more tension is built, because we know that we eventually have to execute this perfectly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard your 10. I've heard your 9. I am a man of strong will. I also gave it a 9.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
I'm the outlier. That's
Spicy.
weird. I was not expecting that at all.
So, again, tremendous commitment to practical aerial effects, right? And there's one thing that I've been thinking about off and on, and I haven't gone and looked to see if there's any behind the scenes yet on how they do it, but I am curious, because they do, most of the shots, we acknowledge that they're actors, they're not allowed to touch the controls, they're in the back seat of an F-18.
Yep.
But we get several shots of two-seater F-18s.
Yep.
And in those shots, you have the front-seater pilot actor and the back-seater who's the weapons officer, operator, or whatever they're called now, who's also the actor. And I don't know if did they splice two shots together?
They probably had to.
Because that's something I'm curious about, but it's so seamless and well done that only looking back at it, you think, well, someone in that plane has to be the Navy pilot.
It's just drone piloting.
That is something that they can do.
Yeah.
Maybe not to that level. It's very straight and level.
It would probably, like, if there was going to be a shot like that, I would imagine that they would either composite the behind the shot for them to match it, or if they're, for whatever reason, the military was like, all right, we're going to drone fly this while the two of you are up here and don't touch anything, and we're going to go in a straight line.
That's an incredible. I mean, they do convert old F-16s to drone planes and use them as target practice.
Mhm.
So like theoretically, that is something they're capable of, but also the flip side of that is none of those planes are intended to ever land.
That seems like a really big risk.
Right. Yeah. There's no way. It's got to be a composite.
Because an F-18 Super Hornet's like what, like $56 million
It's a
plane
lot
or
of
something.
money. It's a lot of money.
Or I'm probably actually off. It's probably more than that.
It's a lot of money.
And we haven't even talked about the enemy aircraft yet, right? Like the 5th generation fighters that are supposed to be
Are not
this.
actually 5th generation fighters. They're Su-57s. So they're 4th.
Yeah,
but anyways.
Su-57s, but they're
regardless, in the context of the story,
Yeah.
they are a unspecified technologically superior piece of
Correct.
war
Yeah.
technology. and I absolutely loved the payoff on that too,
Mhm.
right? Because they go into this with the whole thing of we've got to beat these times because anything less and you end up in a dogfight with these guys and you're going to lose.
Yeah, just because of technological
Yeah.
superiority.
And so it gets to the point where, Chekhov's gun gets fired and they have to fight these guys.
Yeah.
And they start pulling maneuvers that even Maverick is like, what just happened? I have no idea how that's possible.
Watching the 57 do a vector thrust to get behind them is one of the coolest things I've ever seen.
It was so good.
Yeah, that was cool. So the reason I gave it a 9, you know why I gave it a 9?
No, I have no idea.
Because they didn't give me enough of it.
It
was so good. I needed the climax of the movie is phenomenal. And there's a lot of payoff there from the training stuff at the start of in terms of tension and an understanding of what they need to be doing and if they're doing it or not and the consequences, right? But I needed more aerial combat. And I did not get more aerial combat.
I can definitely actually agree with that. So when we were watching it the first time, about like I'll say halfway through the first half of the film or whatever, I was like, man, we're really not getting that much aerial stuff. So they really must be holding out till the end,
right?
Which they were. I mean, it was like what, a solid like 40 minutes of
them just in
the
planes.
mission. Yeah. But yeah, that's my biggest complaint, right? Because OG Top Gun, we start out with an aerial encounter.
That is true.
Like a live action, there's real threat, not training. Then we have training, and then we get a live action real threat. Here we kind of had sort of that with Tom in his test pilot role.
Yeah.
But it's not the same thing.
It's a different kind of, it's a much more slow burn.
Right. Yeah. It's a different kind of theoretical threat that isn't just an enemy plane on the horizon. Right?
Correct. Yeah.
So that's really my big ding for it it's not that they did something wrong. It's that they just didn't give me enough of it.
Yeah. That is 100% acceptable.
Yeah. So moving forward into the performance. This is a realm that I'm really curious to hear some scores. Andrew went first. We'll give it to Joel.
Okay. I gave performance a 9.
All right.
Yeah.
I felt that this was from a dramatic performance perspective, this is the best film that Tom Cruise has ever made. The best role that he has ever executed.
Oh, basically his single take of him basically talking to himself when he's talking to Val Kilmer.
Yes.
Or Iceman is just, oh man.
Yes.
Like he just you can see like every emotion.
He is, because he's so torn up about the things that he's going to have to do to these kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because he feels like there is not enough time to get them good enough to where they can actually survive the mission. He can get them good enough to where they can succeed, but he can't get them good enough to come home.
Them home.
Right.
Yeah.
And it is just tearing him up. And so good. So good. And then also Miles Teller, who plays Rooster.
Oh, perfect casting.
Which he hasn't been in that much critically acclaimed stuff. Like he was in the Divergent series of films, played Peter. He was in the 2015 Fantastic Four as Reed Richards.
Ooh.
And like
that's not
those
good.
Films are just
not good resume.
but his performance in this was so incredible.
I believe that man was Goose's son.
Not only was he was
Anthony Edwards' son,
right?
Goose's son. Not Anthony Edwards, Goose's son.
Physically speaking, like he looked the same, and obviously the mustache helps.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
But he wasn't a one-note character either. He wasn't the guy who has a chip on his shoulder because Maverick got his dad killed. He was the competent officer who also happens to have a chip on his shoulder because Maverick got his dad killed, and other plot
a little
relevant
extra spice
things,
on there.
right?
Yeah.
Like there was definitely some subtlety there where there was at least a period in his life where they were close and there was trust, and that trust was broken. And all of that came through in his performance.
That's good. Andrew, you want to go?
You can go. I'm looking something up.
Okay. So Joel, you gave it a 9.
Mm-hmm.
I gave it a 10.
Okay. I can't be mad at that.
And you talked up Tom Cruise, right? We talked up the emotional weight. And again, I did not go into a Top Gun expecting to have more emotional investment in the characters on screens than, another unnamed movie franchise
that we have named several times.
We're not mentioning names right now.
It is
in this
really,
one moment.
It is really sad that you have essentially, what is just a quotation marks propaganda film, and then you have the sequel where you're like, oh, I was not expecting to cry.
This is a great film. So I want to call out, I'm not going to name a bunch of the actors or whatever, and I'm going to let Andrew handle some of that for some of the other people. What I want to call out is actually commitment to a process and how well it paid off on screen. So they did chemistry interviews with people, or basically the actors to be Rooster, where they went out to meet Tom Cruise, and he spent time with them to determine if they were going to have good on-screen chemistry.
Oh, I didn't know this. This is cool.
So there were 3 candidates to play Rooster, which Miles Teller obviously won out. Nicholas Hoult, who is a face I recognize but not a name I know. And the third person is Glenn Powell. He's Hangman in the movie. So he actually did so well in his auditions and in his time that they said, well, we don't want you to be Rooster, but we're going to take a part that was just a side part, and we're actually going to make it a character so we can have you in the film. So they committed to this process of let's get people in, let's make sure they work together well on screen. And also, I would say all the training that Tom made all the other actors do, that does build camaraderie, right?
Oh, it definitely does.
Because when they come into the bar and they're all greeting each other, they have history with each other at that point because they spent however many months having to go through this training that he made them do. But that commitment to those kinds of processes, I think, really pays off here, where it's not that the lines being delivered are perfect. Oh, they're really good lines in the movie, but it's that the people who are saying them to each other, they all know and understand and get along and work with each other really well. And I think that paid off just tremendously for the whole movie.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. I didn't know that they did that. And honestly, Glenn Powell as Hangman was fantastic.
Yeah, he's good.
He played the
You're looking good. I am good.
Well, he was kind of like a mix of Iceman and Maverick from the first film.
Both of them were.
Yeah, well, I mean,
just like different recombinations of the same themes, and they even at the end of the film have the same moment on the deck of the carrier.
You could be my wingman anytime.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, Hangman is he's kind of the antagonist figure in the group. He's the Maverick.
Yeah.
Whereas Rooster is the protagonist figure, but he is the Iceman. He's the one who wants to make sure everyone makes it home. He's gonna sacrifice, right? That comes up early on to make sure that his buddies survive the mission kind of thing.
Yeah. It's really interesting, a lot of the role reversals that they did with this.
We're going to get into this in plot, let me tell you.
Okay, so I gave it a 9.
Okay, yeah.
And I mean, pretty much everything that we've already talked about, Tom Cruise, probably one of my favorite, if not his best performance that I've seen him in. I haven't seen every single film he's been in, so don't fault me for that one. But, on top of that, okay, so I have to talk about Monica Barbaro. Phoenix, who I hope turns into kind of the new Michelle Rodriguez of this generation. She's got the right
attitude, moxie or whatever. Yeah.
She was so good. On top of Bob, which he's not
Louis Perlman. Hold on,
and that's another instance of subversion.
Louis Pullman.
That's another instance of subversion of expectation used well with all of these kind of fantastical nicknames with the call signs. And he's just Bob. Is that your name? Yeah. Is that your call sign? Yeah.
You're not very inventive, are you?
No.
So one thing we actually haven't mentioned at all in basically the entire cast so far is quotation marks the love story.
I have a lot to say in the plot.
Yeah.
about that.
Penny and Pete. And Jennifer Connelly actually did. I thought she did a really good job at being, I'll say, the more mature love interest for Tom Cruise's.
There's an awful lot to say that I'm waiting to say.
Kind of a seasoned mentor role.
Yeah. And but she did a good job. But I definitely think that she's probably the weakest for the performance side. Mostly just because probably the love story isn't.
I think that's the writing.
The love story just doesn't really.
Yeah, she was the least connected to the main thrust of the film and didn't have the material to really sink her teeth into.
Well, and she was basically, and there's more plot, but she was basically the reason for Tom Cruise or Pete to come back home from the mission, and so like that's kind of her role in the film, is to be the anchor for him, to be like, I actually have a life somewhere.
Right.
Where, up until this point, he's just been kind of a vagabond for military standards of just always moving around and
in the military.
Yeah.
Well, I'll name some other names if you're not going to name some names.
I mean, we kind of got distracted there.
Okay.
But we have to talk basically about Val Kilmer. It's a cameo role.
Yeah.
But this is more than likely going to be his last movie role. Just because he had throat cancer and he can't actually speak anymore without assistance from a voice box, which whenever I heard that he was going to be in the film, I was really worried that they're going to give him like the Tarkin treatment, where like they just synthesize his voice.
They did kind of.
Well, they did a little bit, but not. They still addressed the fact that he basically had cancer.
That there was something wrong with his voice. Right?
Correct. And I thought it was just a really just emotional scene, not something that I would expect from, the antagonist from the last film.
Well, I loved their text conversations leading up to that, because it was just such a familiarity and an intimacy of Maverick sharing his innermost thoughts with his oldest friend, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it was...
Both y'all just snapped around and looked at me. Oh, gosh.
Well, no, I mean, you looked like you were going to say something just a second ago.
I was just kind of, we're naming names. I'm going to keep naming some names. Some additions, right? So Jack Hamm and Charles Parnell.
John Hamm.
I totally wrote Jack Hamm. John Hamm and Charles Parnell as our two admirals who are overseeing the mission.
Cyclone and Warlock.
They were great. They were great little... it's the extra pinch of spice, right? They didn't have to do a ton, but what they did was perfect. They were the exact type that you want for this role. They had good chemistry with each other. They projected the right kind of perceptions on screen, towards Tom's characters, Maverick, etc. It's just those little extra pieces added in, I think, were great.
I think my favorite snippet of their performance is going to be the one where the base commander's like, you're putting me in such a terrible position. What do I do? And Maverick goes to answer. And the other one's like, I think the Admiral was asking metaphorically.
Speaking rhetorically. Speaking rhetorically.
I love at the end whenever they get back on the carrier and you just see him. He's like, shaking his hands.
Well, they're like both up, still in the bridge tower. And they look down and they're like, yeah.
or even like when they're up there and Maverick buzzes the tower on the way back in and they're just like, ugh.
Always something.
Yeah. It's like he gets this one, but
I don't want to give it to him.
I mean, he saved the day pretty much. So
okay, it just overall. Well, I pulled this up. Another one I'll call out. Bashir Salahuddin. I probably butchered his name. Hondo.
Oh, Hondo was great.
And so there was a lot of there's been a lot of time, real life, between Top Gun and Top Gun 2. They put that physical time in the movie as well. So you have all these relationships that have built up over time. This is obviously someone that Maverick has maintained a relationship with over time.
Yeah.
And I believed it on screen, right? Like, you don't get a ton between them. You get enough, but you don't get a ton. But I believed, they're like buddies, like war buddies, or however you want to look at it. And it's like,
or he's been working for Maverick
for so long. And like they're invested in the success, and that my blood returns, right?
Oh yeah, whenever they're saying goodbye to each other on the carrier.
Yeah, before the launch.
Oh man, that's like because you can definitely feel like the history between them of like yeah, you're probably not coming back from this.
And it's a perfect setup too, narratively, because you're trained to think, because of the unspoken words between Rooster and Maverick, that one of them's not coming back, so they're never going to get to finish the conversation.
Yeah, we'll have this conversation after the mission.
No, you don't do that. Of expectations done the right way.
Oh my goodness. Oh, plot. We're going to get into some of that. But before we get to the plot, I think we're about ready to move to some score.
Some score.
Score of the score.
I guess it's my turn to go first.
Sure.
And I don't know, maybe I'll get beat up for this. I gave score an 8.
I mean, that's fine.
I think they had a really good choice to leave the music out in some critical scenes.
Oh, when he's going through the basically the trial run, he's stolen the F-18, and it's just him and the engine.
And his breathing.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Like
so much breathing.
And it built the tension to not be told, because it's the suspension. It's trying to get you to hold your breath.
Yep.
Whereas if there's music there, then
you kind of know where it's going.
Yeah. You know what the emotion you're supposed to be feeling is. And so you're not kind of held back waiting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're just smashed into the front of that piece of glass of the cockpit as he's going, basically. And I think those were some really good choices. I do think that maybe it was harmed a little bit by there are a lot of composers involved in this music.
Yeah, it's a cacophony.
Yeah, it's not one smooth throughout, and it doesn't have to be, but it maybe was almost like there's just a few too many hands in here. And I think everything we got individually from the people was good. It just doesn't always, it's not a cohesive whole. I think that's my biggest ding for it. So that's the 8. So
yeah, that's fair.
I'll hand it off to someone else.
I'm gonna go ahead and concur. I also gave it an 8.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed including Danger Zone, including the Top Gun anthem, but then updating the way that they were incorporated with the sound design and the scene transitions to where it's kind of a more technically sound, modern approach to that area of filmmaking, where these aren't just blasting at full volume, just forcing you to be like, I don't care what's on the screen, get hype. But they actually serve the storytelling, while at the same time pushing the nostalgia button in a respectful way.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a big key, I think, as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, because when you're going into a film like this that has essentially 30 years or 36 years of hype, you have a kind of a duty and a really big responsibility to make it to where you're not nostalgia baiting the whole time, and you're just calling it back just enough,
or the twist,
with the twist,
spice.
And so I gave it a 9.
Okay, all right.
It's definitely one of those things where, like, I mean, we've already established throughout other episodes of the podcast, I cry very easily in films.
I was crying the entire film. It was so good.
And it's one of those things where, and I'm not even the biggest like Lady Gaga fan, but the ending of the film where they're in the hangar and then, obviously Penny comes back. And Goose and the Lady Gaga song is like playing, blasting over the theater, and then Rooster walks up to the wall and hits the thing. I'm like, I'm done. Like, this is it, man. Yeah. And then all the action scenes were really good. I thought especially whenever Maverick and Rooster are kind of on the ground infiltrating the broken down runway to get up on the F-14.
Yeah.
Like some of those little tracks, I was like, oh, this is definitely Zimmer right here.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Just because it has like that kind of drone to it.
Yeah.
Especially whenever was it a Hind, the helicopter?
Yeah.
I think it was a Hind.
CGI Hind.
Was it CGI?
I think so.
I don't know. It looked pretty real to me.
It stuck out for some reason to me. I'm gonna look that up. Actually, I'm curious, but I'm almost positive it was supposed to be a Hind.
But yeah, so whenever that's happening, like you can definitely feel the dread in the scene, and and probably my favorite part of the film, and you know exactly what's going to happen when it happens, but whenever the radar op on the carrier is like, hey, Rooster's locator just showed back up. Well, that's got to be a malfunction. No, he's supersonic, and then it shows John Hamm or Cyclone, who's like, Maverick, and it does a dong.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, that's exactly what I wanted to see right there.
Yeah.
And I thought the sound design and the punctuation for the whole movie was just fantastic. Probably the only thing that really, probably the only thing I actually did ding it for was the Great Balls of Fire sequence in the thing. I think that was a little bit too much nostalgia baiting for me. Just because, like I understand that Rooster has, clearly some dad issues because he lost his dad at a young age, and he wants to emulate his dad. He wanted to be a fighter pilot. He wanted to join the Navy, and he clearly has the aesthetic going that his dad had. I think it's one step too far that he also learned the same song. That's more of a plot thing,
right? I feel like they had limited touchstones to work with,
and you really needed that,
but the scene needed to happen.
Yeah, and you needed you needed the PTSD flashbacks for Tom Cruise to happen so he could
because at some point you've got to encapsulate in this one film all of the preceding event knowledge.
Exactly.
So that you can watch it on its own.
Yeah, without having to see the original film.
Yeah.
So, but that was pretty much like when I knew that, like, he sat down on the piano, I was like, oh, I know the Great Balls of Fire is about to happen.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think that's a little step too far for me. It's a lot better the second time you watch it because you kind of already know what's going to happen in that scene. So it's a little bit less jarring. But anyways, I digress.
Yeah. I mean, I was wondering. I did not find any information on whether or not it is specifically called out as a hind in summaries, but if whether or not it felt like CGI to me. I mean, obviously, any missile or bullet or those things
of course,
were definitely CGI.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just for some reason,
they fired some 20mm Vulcans.
I don't know.
Tom Cruise.
Gotta get practicing somewhere.
I mean, he does his own stunts.
Dodge these bullets for real, Tom. No ejection seat here.
Okay. So we are on to the plot now.
Let's talk some plot. This can be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to let someone else start.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and take it then. I gave plot an 8 out of 10. Right. The basic character stories in here are fantastic. The showing, I mean, even just, I keep coming back to it, but the basic execution of showing a matured, settled, stable version of the same man that we saw in the previous film is in itself a technical achievement. Yeah. To get that tone just right. And to then continue that on with he has the continuing themes of being confronted by the mistakes that he made as a young man. Right. And whether that be continuously pushing the envelope, kind of tangentially getting his best friend killed, to not really being able to maintain a stable relationship just because he's too obsessed with following whatever the next excitement is.
Yeah.
All of those themes kind of coming back to or even also like talking about his career. They have a whole conversation about how he's not where he should be given his technical ability.
Yeah.
But that theme played out is very consistently hammered and has a really nice payoff in the scene between him and Iceman, where he is talking about, I have to do better. I want to do better. And I have no idea how. Yeah. And so like, that is fantastic. The mission design has holes you can poke in it, obviously.
It does.
But
why they couldn't just tomahawk the SAM sites?
Yeah.
Now in the film, I didn't catch it the first time. The second time I watched it, they do say at the beginning of the briefing, initially, like whenever he gets to Top Gun, that they are GPS jammed. However, Tomahawk missiles have 4 different targeting systems.
Yeah, they don't care about whatever world GPS jamming means. It's just the MacGuffin excuse to say we can't fly the top line F-35s when the real excuse is F-35s are single-seater planes and would not care about any of the obstacles presented in this movie.
Well, okay. Anyways, continue.
Right. So what they did do with that is that you have a detailed set of mission parameters that allow you to clearly understand the goals and the stakes for all of the characters involved.
Because there's a lot of stakes just even in the execution of flying through a canyon at low altitude.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
which is something that they do not successfully achieve in training, right?
Yep.
Like the first time they do it right is live.
Yeah.
And so like it is the amount of time that they spend on training coupled with the clarity of communication with the parameters of the mission mean that you as the audience understand everything that they are attempting to achieve at every point, the difficulty of that task and the consequences of failure, which allow tension to continue to build.
Right.
And like it's the best Star Wars movie ever made from that perspective.
Yeah. Because
they destroyed the Death Star, and it took 2 direct torpedo strikes, not just one.
And one using the Force.
Right. And and Poe Dameron had his arc that he deserved. He just didn't get to be played by Oscar Isaac.
The torpedoes also didn't have to turn a right angle at speed.
Yep.
You shed doubt on the existence of inertia in your entire universe.
So all that being said, all fantastic stuff. I was annoyed by the love story.
I mean, that's totally fair.
Because while okay, so if we compare it to the love story in the original, which was a whole lot of different directions of objectionable.
Yeah.
This one was a very respectful relationship. He came into her bar and like subjected himself to her rules in her bar.
Yeah.
When they went out on like the one big date, she was teaching him how to operate the boat and
the
stuff.
role reversal was fantastic.
But also had some great humor in it of what, you're in the Navy? You don't know how to sail? Like, I land planes on the boats. I don't do anything with the boats.
Yeah. And so like it was a whole bunch of, there was just, it was very careful to strike a tone of mutual respect between the characters, which is really great to see on screen. And particularly in contrast to what was in the original film.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we already have the relationship subplot of
him and Rooster.
And him, like, one of his consequences is if I let him go on this mission, he probably doesn't come home. If I don't let him go on this mission, he will never speak to me again.
Right.
So like he's already got something to come home for because he wants to continue to have a relationship with Rooster. And so she is just kind of extra on that. And so it feels like that entire subplot is basically fat that could be trimmed or needs a little something extra to beef it up.
I think it could have used maybe one extra scene to really kind of add it in a little bit.
Because it does, because like it is not like tonally dissonant. It contributes to the same themes. Because it's still the themes of, well, he can't keep a long-term relationship going because he just doesn't commit to it, right? And so this is another reminder of the failures of his youth, and the determination to do better and to mature. And so like all of that is good and it aligns with the rest of the film. It just didn't feel as well fleshed out.
It also gives us an opportunity because it gives someone for him to confide in. So it gives us an opportunity to develop more of the conflict between him and Rooster.
Yeah, his personal thoughts of...
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Right. And why... Because I appreciated that they gave us a justification of, well, you know, why don't... Like, you did this thing that he hates you for, you know, of preventing him from getting into the academy or slowing his progress. And, well, why don't you just tell him you did that because his mom wanted you to? And it's like, well, I mean, his mom has passed away. Like, why... Like, I'll take the heat for this and not have him have a regret directed towards his mother, right?
Yeah.
And that, one, that's a really mature statement, and two, it's a really weird thing for him just to talk to himself out loud. So you need someone else there that he has a connection to.
Yeah, you need some kind of exposition.
Yeah. And you get it there in their interactions. I gave plot an 8 too. Just I'll throw that in there.
Okay.
I have other reasons for giving it 8.
What were those other reasons,
Mostly
Stephen?
centered around some of our military representations, but it's okay.
I mean, that's just how it always goes.
Yeah, I mean, you know, no big deal. You just snatched a live FA-18 off of a runway somewhere and then took it out and flew it, and there's just no consequences.
So the only explanation that I could give myself for that kind of thing is that they are still on essentially an educational airbase, and he at least would be able to talk the other people that help him get the plane ready into some form of, hey, I need to use this real quick.
The thing is, he also has authority, right?
So he does. He's a captain.
The rank of captain in the Navy is quite high. This is the step below being
a rear admiral.
Okay. So he's not, a lieutenant, junior grade, whatever. No one's
Old
Maverick
listen to you. Couldn't do that.
Yeah. Prior Maverick could not have done that. Couldn't have even gotten into the cockpit at that point. So it's still the question of, well, you have to do this perfectly, or the consequences are you're court-martialed, which, we're right back to the original Top Gun, basically.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are some other.
While you're kind of, I did like a lot of the explanation of why he's still there is because he's friends with Iceman, and Iceman's a rear admiral.
Iceman Iceman's.
He was a vice admiral.
He's in charge of the Pacific Fleet. He is an
you're right,
admiral.
Right. Yeah,
he has 4 stars on his jersey, his uniform.
Yeah.
He is big man in charge, and I think it does play to kind of who they were as people carrying through.
Okay,
which is great.
That I guess I missed the 4 stars, because that would make sense why Cyclone would basically be like, I was told to bring you
3
here.
stars.
Yeah, because he's a 3-star.
No, they make it really clear that because when he sees the photo of him in the uniform and you see the plaque below, like, he's the commander of the Pacific Fleet. Like, you are a big deal.
Yeah,
and it makes sense, right? Because Iceman was the one that was willing to follow the rules, follow the regulations, play the game, because at a certain point in peacetime military, like, all these promotions are politics, which the character of Maverick was never going to play, and he doesn't, and he only goes as far as he can.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my other, we've already mentioned, if you can tomahawk the runway, why can't you just tomahawk the SAMs? They only use flares, and they make a really big point about using the word flares, and you don't.
They're technically countermeasures for one.
Well, you would hope.
Yeah.
Because if you're not actually using chaff as well, then if it's a radar guided missile, you're just dead.
Yeah, it just doesn't matter. And SAMs are generally radar guided missiles, right?
It can be either way, which is why you use both, because you don't get to know. Like,
but they talk about them being on radar, right? Like that's
different. That's different.
Totally different radar.
That's a very different set. That is actually a different setup, because if you alert to radar 1, again, jet scramble, right?
Yeah.
And also it means that depending on how the SAMs are set, they're actively tracking you. So they would have to be actively tracking you to launch the missile in the first place, right? Mm-hmm. They have to know you're there.
Which they are.
And then the missile itself could just be infrared guided. And so it's just homing on the heat signature.
Right.
Which flares is what that's supposed to do. They shouldn't just like hit the flares and blow up. They should just be basically what happens is the missile loses its target and it runs out of fuel. You just outrun it.
Yeah.
Same thing for the radar approach. They've made a really big point. Just flare. I was like, man, like they're just dead.
I mean, the flares do look really cool.
Well, and that's the other argument, right? Because while releasing like Shaft can look decent in like a photo and stuff, it's not as good looking as flares are going to look.
Yeah.
And they may have tried to do, because I assume the flare releases, they only did it once and everything else is CGI, because that's a lot of money just punching the button over and over again. And they may have tried to CGI Shaft as well, and it just didn't work.
Yeah, well, I mean, probably the key shot of whenever Maverick does the Cobra
overhead,
overhead
a good shot.
Oh man, clearly, like all of that is probably going to be CGI.
You hope.
Really that is a big risk with a something odd $1 million plane.
Well, there's 2 of them. There's double that number.
Yeah. So I gave Plot an 8.
Hey, consensus.
Yeah. Kind of for most of the same things. I think probably my biggest fault was really the bar scene, where you do get a lot. You have to introduce so many characters and so many different personalities so quickly that it felt, one, pretty clunky, but then honestly, the biggest thing that just killed it for me was the flashback footage of the original film.
It was not necessary.
Yeah.
It was not necessary. Yeah. And I do understand that you need to be able to show this movie to people that have never seen the first one and they can still appreciate it. I totally get that. I think there was more than enough context clues that happen in the film.
Yeah, that's fair.
Without you having to show the footage. And it's like, I can also understand you showing maybe one or two pieces of footage that are really key to the scene of like, you know, Maverick remembering Goose playing, you know, with Rooster there, and then like maybe of him of like him landing in the water and him, you know, like cradling Goose as he's dead, and that's it. But they just kept going with it and going with it. And it's like, no, stop. This doesn't need to happen. Everyone already knows.
Yeah.
And if you don't know, then you'll probably figure it out anyways. And so that like the first time watching it is better the second time, but because you just know it's coming, so you can kind of mentally prepare yourself for it. But the first time I was like, no, this movie has to be good. Please don't ruin this.
Don't do this. Don't do this to me.
The one thing I really did like though was whenever Maverick basically gets assigned to go on the actual mission to be the team leader. And he shows up at the bar in his full, you know, I guess deployment garb.
Oh, yeah, and there's no dialogue.
And there's no dialogue. And
so
it is the best thing of show, don't tell.
Yeah.
Like, I love that there was no dialogue. You knew exactly why he was there. She knew why he was there. And then, like, they're just standing there. Beautiful shot of them on the water and the bar behind them. And it was, I mean, one, really emotional, but two, thank you for not having dialogue in that scene because it would have ruined it.
Yeah, that's a good point because he shows up in, I guess it's called Class A. I don't actually know. Whatever, full dress uniform. Yeah, which is obviously not what he does in 95% of his life. He avoids these things. He has the leather jacket.
Yep.
So I made some nitpicks. I'm going to say some good things about the plot. The role reversals, the subversion of expectations throughout was great. They played into it for humor. They played into it for relationship development with him and Penny. The humor of him like going out the window. And, of course he's old.
You know what's going to happen.
He just totally busts doing it. Gets up and her daughter's just standing there staring at him.
Oh, and that was such a great moment too because you get the laugh of all of this effort and looking ridiculous. You just get caught anyway, right?
Yeah.
But then it's followed up with the moment of poignance where she's like, just don't break her heart again, please.
And it's just like, ooh, man.
Hit home.
Yeah. The I'll also say too, I really liked basically the triple fake for you think this pilot's going to die? Actually, he's not. You think these pilots are going to die, and we don't want them to die because we like Phoenix and we like Bob. They're not going to die. It was actually Ice, and that's really sad. And it also felt earned. It was kind of one of those things where whenever he goes to Ice's house and, his wife is like, hey, it's back. There's nothing we can do. And you're like, wow, that's really sad. But, he's still here and we can have this scene with him. And then, 30 minutes goes by or however long. And then, it's like, well, I mean, that's what it was.
And it's super plot relevant too. Because at that point, he no longer has a protector.
Yep.
And nothing is keeping his past from wreaking as much vengeance on him as it can.
Yeah. What else did you like?
Well, and this one actually flew. Andrew and I had this discussion with other friends because this one flew right past.
I'm so sad now.
Well, you hadn't watched the movie yet. So.
We didn't know when you saw the movie, so we didn't add you to the.
But it flew right past me. Penny is actually an old flame. She's name dropped in the first movie.
Oh, is she?
Yeah.
So when he gets dressed down by Stinger of 5 violations of flying by the tower and this
the Admiral's daughter
and Goose leans over and is like Penny Benjamin to him. That's who it is. And then Goose's wife even brings it up with Maverick again later in the first movie.
Yep.
So she is actually, and again, this is probably one of the things I liked the most about the movie was they handled the time lapse really well. It wasn't this is next day and we're just supposed to believe Tom is young again or something. And it wasn't he's still the same person because nothing changes. It was definitely, hey, like there are established relationships and things have definitely happened. And we see that some of that play out. We see it with, Ice and his relationship, and we see that play out, to its conclusion.
Yeah.
And other places. But I really, really like the way they handled that throughout because it feels real. It feels like actual people, going through decades of their life and the results and kind of the accumulated toll of decisions and choices and consequences.
Yes.
Yeah. One thing, kind of on the note of little nitpicky, was during basically the Mach 10 test of the the Dark Star is what they call it,
Yeah,
I think, or
so.
something like that. Why would you turn in the middle of like a mock, like basically a speed
I
test?
don't know.
I had a lot of stress on an airframe.
The only explanation that I could think of would be that at some point you're going so fast you're going to hit the end of your testing area.
Yeah.
You run out of airspace.
And you run out of airspace and you have to turn back around. But he just kept speeding up. So I know Steven.
Great
you mentioned
shots though.
Oh, they were beautiful.
beautiful. And so
I loved him catching up to the sun.
So I love that scene just because it was very much so kind of not a parody, but an imitation of an actual test flight that occurred with the SR-71, which the Dark Star is obviously very closely modeled after, where they were doing tests over, the out far west, and they were doing a specific type of test, but in a turn that caused issues. And above Mach 3, the plane literally disintegrated around the pilot and co-pilot. And tragically, the radar, I cannot remember what they call it. System. It's not that for an SR-71. But the systems officer did not survive the quote unquote forced ejection. The pilot did, but that scene kind of played on the same thing where the guy basically came down on his chute and was somewhere in between Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, or Utah. Take your pick because they're in a turn and it's like the turning radius is very wide. And he's trying to gather his chute down, and a voice says to him, "Hey, can I help you?" He's like, "What?" And he looks up and there's just a millionaire rancher who had been out observing his cattle in his helicopter, and he saw the chutes. So he landed. So it was like as soon as he was on the pilot was on the ground, he was basically picked up. Like in the actual interview, he said, like, I could tell Edwards Air Force Base's search and rescue team, where I was going to be at what time and what minute, and I could not have been picked up faster.
Yeah.
But they kind of play on the whole thing of like, well, he gets flown to the hospital and has to call the base, and everybody's like, what do you? Because they're in basically a spacesuit.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, what are you doing? And all this other. So yeah, I personally liked it just for that because it is kind of that story. And again, we got really good humor with it of like where am I?
Earth?
Yeah.
It was so good.
And it really set the tone for the kind of comedy that you're going to get throughout the film, I think. Because like right before that, has anyone gotten you coffee yet?
Yeah.
And the admiral's just like, are you kidding me? Like,
right, yeah.
How can I make this more pleasant? Well, I think at this point we're ready to move into a little entertainment, and we're going to find out who snitched,
who didn't give it
who
a 10.
didn't give it a 10.
9.
I can already
I
tell
know
you
who it wasn't.
Everyone looks at me.
Yeah, we're all doing like the duel at high noon thing here. We're like checking.
Yeah, no, I gave it a 10. It was exceeded my expectations. If I could give it a higher grade, then I definitely would. Because I mean, it watching it the first time was amazing and I loved it. Watching it the second time, one, you get a lot more of the smaller details here and there, but I was still on the edge of my seat for the final act of the film. And every time, that they're going to basically infiltrate the runway that is destroyed and get in the F-14. And it's going to happen, and it is still just so satisfying.
I love the first, okay, run now. Oh, yep, we're running. Okay.
Well, it's one of those things where there's so much activity going on.
Right, if you stride with purpose,
you could get away with something. And then it's like, wait, don't we need to go?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, because you don't really know who the bad guys are, which is totally fine. I'm glad that they kept it vague, and it was just a nameless country that is probably Russia, but that's fine.
Iran,
because they're the only ones that have F-14s that are currently in service. And but yeah, I mean, I like that they kept it vague because you don't know if they're basically the same ethnicity. So you if they were caught on the runway.
Oh, right. Would it be obvious that they were different?
You couldn't tell.
Here. Well, I mean, their pilot suits kind of look different. They got the American style helmets of everything. Everybody gets their own colors, and the pilots very obviously just have black everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have to be the bad guy.
Faceless enemy.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is something that they'd inherited from the presentation in the first film.
Yes.
Which, it's really, it's kind of a two-edged sword, right? Because if you have a villain and in this case, kind of an organization, a villainous organization, i.e. another country, that you can describe their attributes and you can give them details to the characters that are important in that organization or country, and you can flesh out their motivations, and you can reap a lot of rewards from that. But in this kind of story, that's just not necessary and would take so much extra time to do right.
Yeah.
That if you just say, well, we're not going to do it at all, they're just the bad guys.
They're just bad guys.
Yeah. Well, it also helps it age, right?
Yeah.
Because, 20 years from now, you fire up the movie and it's like, oh yeah, that's back when we hated, whatever country this was. And now we're best buds.
Yeah. So one thing that I have heard some people complain about was why there was basically a third bandit out to sea after basically he had fought the other two in the F-14. And I honestly, whenever I saw it, I was like, oh, that makes sense, because probably if there was going to be another bandit in the air, it was more than likely trying to intercept the fighters that are clearly already trying to leave. And by the time that basically whenever they engage the F-14, his friends are in active combat at that point, and he has to go help them.
And I really like at that point in the film where the characters that we're following just simply have no means of communication.
Yeah.
And so they don't have a way to understand the details of what's going on with everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. For all we know, the AWACS is screaming that there's extra bandits in the air and that they have no way of knowing.
And two, that lets us have the last moment save without it feeling cheap.
Yeah, because as far as no help is on the way.
Right. But you also know that Hangman had been sitting there on the deck going, send me in, coach. Send me in, coach.
Put me in.
And but then we've had this long period of zero communication, and our bubble of what we're allowed to observe has shrunk down to just these two people and this one cockpit. So the trajectories of everything we know from before the communications blackout, and we just don't know if they made it there, essentially.
Yeah.
And so that, while I'm not a fan of last minute psych out saves like that, this one was executed about as well as it
possibly could be. Yeah.
All right. So time for us to reveal. I gave it a 10.
Uh-oh.
I saw that one coming a mile away.
I mean, we get phenomenal aerial footage.
Probably some of the best that there's ever been.
Yeah. That there will be, honestly.
Yeah.
We have honestly great emotional payoffs and really well constructed and handled story. And just, I think the thing that really puts it over the top for me is just the humor. That extra bit of, why did you come back to save me?
You told me not to think.
What? No, what were you thinking? You told me not to think. And he's just like, all right, yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Because it's such a high tense moment, for what's going on. And, we have the whole payoff of, oh, wow, did they just down Maverick? Is this his final
I legit thought they did the first time watching it.
I kind of would have accepted it. He goes out in the blaze of glory of saving, his
surrogate son, essentially.
Yeah. Who he's been on, rocky terms with, right? And then we get to play it again of, well, now Rooster's been shot down, and now we're playing Mission Impossible, which, we stretched it a little, but at the point,
the convenience of the distance to the runway is questionable, but that's fine.
Or just getting an F-14 off the ground on a taxiway when it's generally a carrier-based plane. The only F-14 we would have given any other country had the crappy engines, and you have no catapult assist.
Yeah, so it's a F-14A.
Yeah, most
at that
likely.
point. Yeah,
you're just not getting off.
They had terrible engines. Just
a phenomenal plane attached to two POSs. To put it polite, is how it was described by actual admirals in the Navy.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, just the whole film was great. I did not expect to get this good and for it to hit like it did.
Not even in a million years.
There was no expectation of this whatsoever.
But yeah, I mean, just all around. I'm a little jealous that you got to go and see it again in theaters.
I kind of want to go see it again.
I don't know if I'll be able to find time to see it again, but I think I would like to. But it's definitely going to be a rewatch. Once it's
the second it comes out on streaming,
100%.
Yeah. I'll go do a 7-day trial at Paramount Plus just to watch it again.
And then cancel
it.
And then 6 months from there, I need to make a new email address. So, Joel.
All right. Well, surprise. I gave it an 9.
How dare you?
How dare I? I've already fessed up to it. I was crying for basically the whole film.
I mean, with good reason.
From the balls of fire scene onward, right? Like they have established that Maverick is a man who has matured, but he is struggling with regret.
Yeah.
Right. And like that is so compelling. And every single scene, they just piled more on. These kids you're not going to be able to get them good enough to where they can actually come home. You know, just everything.
The line whenever the Admiral's dressing him down after the first day, and he's like, "And come home." Yeah, and just the shock on John Hamm's face.
The mission is a success, and come home.
Yeah,
like, that's not a parameter.
Yeah, it's like, wow, just stab me in the gut, man.
Yeah. It was just such a fantastic character-driven story, which is not something that you get to say about action films.
Yeah, right. It's very rare.
And so generally, like my two gripes for why it wasn't a 10 experience was the whole romance subplot felt a little thin.
That's fair.
That's fair. I can agree.
And then the ending felt almost too fairy tale, right?
It is a little too perfect.
It is.
And because like I don't understand why there was the need for the fake out of, oh, she left because she was fed up. And then, oh, she showed up anyway. It's like there wasn't any time in between those two things. And so it kind of felt a little well, now they haven't had enough of giving me fake outs. They're just yanking my chain again.
Well, it's really because Tom Cruise wanted to fly his own personal P-51 at the end of the film.
There we go.
Yeah. And you need to have the hot girl with the classic Porsche also in the co-pilot seat.
Yeah. So generally speaking, this was one of the best films that I've seen in a while. And I 100% recommend it to anyone at any time.
Yeah, I think, and that's even, I don't know that you have to watch.
I don't think you do.
You don't have to. You don't have to see the original. And I don't know that I would recommend it.
Yeah, well, that was the other thing.
It'll sour you.
Yeah. I don't even know if you need an emotional connection to it. You know, because like looking around the theater we were in, the demographic was very clear. These were people who had grown up with it. A lot of ex-military, like they were going to relate to this film. But like, you know, Lauren, my wife, you know, she saw Top Gun for the first time like 2 weeks before we went to go see it in theaters. And of course, you know, the film does not age well.
Yeah.
And so like, it doesn't have maybe the greatest connection. She's just like, yeah, that was great. Like just so much going on. It was so well done. It's just shocking, honestly.
Yeah. I'll keep gushing here. The, another just like key moment is whenever, basically all four jets are out of the canyon or out of the top of the mountain, basically, and they're all under Samfire. And just the absolute communication chaos.
Yes.
And that's what it would be.
And that's one of those moments where the cinematography supports it, because you lose the wide angle shots of being able to see the planes in relation to one another, because they're all they have no idea what's going on. They just came out of a near blackout high G situation and they're under constant fire. The most they can do is not die this second.
Yeah.
And it's
just like handle this missile first. Let's get the next one after this one. I mean,
situational awareness comes way down at that point to just, I would like to not be shot down.
And then the way that they demonstrated Maverick's mastery of the art of flying, where he wasn't concentrating on his machine at all. His machine was part of him. And the things that he was doing, both when he saves Rooster from the missile in you know, kind of at the climax of that scene, but also when he saves the pilot that had blacked out, because he's coming in and he's saying, get a missile lock on him because it'll cause a sound in the thing, right? Like it's that kind of, I don't have to think about my plane at all. I know it so well. I'm thinking about the problem from outside. And he consistently demonstrates that, and it's just really satisfying.
I mean, the initial, so something that I really like in this film is because we've seen a couple other films, maybe recently, maybe not, where the power to winning is believing in yourself.
Yeah.
And for certain people who there's no training, like that feels a little unearned.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're saying, hey, this is the top 1%
of the 1%.
of the 1% of pilots, like the best of the best of the best kind of thing. And it's like, hey, at some point you have to trust in, your training, your experience, and your time in the machine to make this work. That's a valid statement to those type of people.
Because like when he's saying, don't think, just do. What he's really saying is you don't have time to analyze. Mm-hmm. You have to trust that the instincts that you have. I mean, it's not just believe in yourself instincts. It's you have trained over
years of experience.
Hundreds of hours of your body knows what to do. Mm-hmm. And if it doesn't and you die, then you didn't have time to think about it and you're going to die anyway. So like you've got to just trust that the preparation you have already put in is sufficient.
Yeah. Yeah. I love too the early, like the training sequences where they're, up in the air and it's like, well, okay, well, where is he? And he's like, good morning. And like shoots between them. And it's like, cause it's kind of the ego check, right? Cause we already had the roll flip at the bar, right? Mm-hmm. And then the whole like, well, push-ups. And then it just keeps cutting to everyone doing push-ups. And like, we never see Maverick hit the pavement. There are so many good, just individual pieces in the film. I guess maybe if I had to say something about it, maybe the start is just a little slow.
It is a very slow burn.
It takes a couple of minutes.
When I say very slow is in like a jet.
Yeah. But compared, right?
Yeah,
it takes a little while for it to ramp up into what it is. Obviously, once you get there, it doesn't matter. We're here now and like we're strapped in, like you don't have a choice. So maybe that's my biggest gripe from an entertainment perspective.
Yeah,
I guess.
And again, one more thing.
Oh yeah.
This is really just calling out just favorite scenes at this point. But whenever they're basically trying to fly casual, and the two Su-57s are like getting ready to they're phoning home, be like, hey, who is in this F-14? And Maverick's like, I just got to do it. Mm-hmm. And, whenever he's like, just call for smoke in the air. And the second that the missile goes out, he flies in front of the other Su that he's already hit, and it blows. It's like, oh, that is just so cool.
Yeah. I love just the interact because again, tense moment, and we get the humor where he's like, smile away. What does that symbol mean? Not a clue. And he's still smiling.
Haven't seen that one either.
No, don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Just, man. Like, and it's one of those things too, where whenever they point out, oh, there's F-14s that these people have on the runway, you're like, oh, that's kind of a cool little call out there.
You know what's going to happen if you saw the trailer.
And then, whenever it's, whenever he gets into it, you feel like, in my mind, being a cynic, you're like, oh, this is going to be so just like, oh, there's an F-14 just here that you can go and fly, which it kind of was. Yeah. But it actually felt really earned. And then the subsequent dogfight that happened of him against the 57 was just absurdly cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also like legit, how does this aging plane get a win here? Well, surprise, I cheat. And you're like, hey, have we started fighting yet? No, we haven't started fighting it. And you pull the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the only way you're out of that against two fighters is to sneak attack one of them and hope that you can disable it.
Well, and I mean, there was never, even for the F-18, the F-18 is a great plane, right? Mm-hmm. But even for them, even if they were, the same technological level supposedly as the other plane, just the mission parameters, what they have to do means they lose, right? Because you start out in a dogfight at ground level.
Yeah.
You just lose, right?
And no airspeed.
Yeah, like you've already burned all the speed to make the run, ignoring the fact that you're blacking out from the high G pull you have to do. I really did like also, because again, visually it looks great, but the inversion to go into the mountain, because physics dictates that is the best way to maintain target. Mm-hmm. Because your wings provide lift, right?
Yep.
They're designed to provide lift. So when you're inverted, they provide lift towards the ground.
It's also, if you're taking that kind of trajectory change at high speed, which they are, then redding out is what happens when you drive all of the blood into your head if you don't invert. And that is much more dangerous.
You want positive G's, not negative G's.
Much more dangerous.
Yeah. Oh, man. I love this movie so much.
I just want to go watch it again. Yeah. Like, golly, I listened to the soundtrack earlier today. I was just like, yeah.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I think We have run out of things to go. We haven't actually run out of things to go.
but we need to
We
stop.
should be out of things. Yes. So until next time, I'm Steven.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Joel.
And as always, every spoiler was intended. Thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, you can support the show for as low as $1 at patreon.com/spoilersintendedpodcast. We also have a Discord server and would love to have more people joining in the conversation. Links are in the description below. Thank you.